Frequently asked questions about the Dji Fpv remote controller. Let's go. The first question we have, FPV control manual error. So this one is about someone who gets some error message in his goggles saying that there is a problem with his remote controller. Let me read what he said. Let me put it in manual and fly just fine, I guess, but it gives me an error that my controller hasn't been set up right or something of the sort. I did change the right stick so it sticks up and down, and I thought that would do it. Is there a sweet spot they want you to get it at? What couldn't they just put a switch of some sort that just did this for us? So I think in this case, if you get such an error message, what you need to do is calibrate your remote controller in your DJI goggles. Okay, so next questions. I think they meant DJI FPV goggles V2 with Mavic 2 smart controller. I'm sure this has been asked. Can you take the video out of a smart controller into FPV headset? This is not something I've tested myself because I don't own a DJI smart controller, but why not? I don't see why it would not work because it's just, a video file recording on the smart controller. It's like you grab the SD card from the smart controller and plug it to your goggles. That should be readable. You tell me if you guys have a smart controller and some like DJI FPV goggles V2. You tell me if it works. Might be interesting. Next question. DJI FPV controller not working through LIFTOFF simulator. Let me read what they say. Hello, not sure if this is where I should be posting this, but I've been having an issue with the new FPV controller V2. This one working on LIFTOFF, seem and possibly even just being recognized on my computer. I plugged the controller in with a USB to USB-C on my computer and then downloaded the DJI Assistant 2 DJI FPV series and updated the firmware on the controller. Under my device manager, I noticed that it shows up under USB controllers as USB composite device, and under other devices it shows HS data channel and MA channel. In my Windows device settings, it's showing as a C5 and the description with driver is unavailable. On Steam, it's recognizing it as an HID device, but it doesn't work on the simulator at all. Has anyone else had this issue and been able to fix it? I noticed some person on YouTube seems to be using it just fine. This guy is on Windows 10. I think if you're trying to use your DJI FPV remote controller on LIFTOFF and it's not recognized, make sure that your remote controller has been activated, because if you've not activated and synced it with your DJI FPV goggles and the quad, it might not be recognized. I've heard that several times in the past. Another question, help. Updated drone goggles and controller can take off my DJI FPV drone. I've updated all my hardware and the goggles still state please update remote controller firmware on the DJI Fly app. Like, the app does not recognize the remote controller, but after updating all on my Mac to the latest version, I still can't take off. Any ideas, please? Did you plug your iPhone to the goggles and turn everything on? What does the DJI Fly app say when you do that? Okay, so the fix here is to plug the phone or iPhone, whatever, to the goggles and turn everything on, and it seems to fix the problem. So your drone can take off, everything is being activated. Grab the goggles, connect it to the DJI Fly app, and turn the goggles on. That should put everything back in order. Okay, so next question. DJI FPV orange message to tighten F2 screw. I am flying manual and I did tighten F2 right from the start. Normal to always see this warning in the goggles, non-stop when flying manually. So this guy is flying his FPV drone and you can see some error message in the goggles asking him to tighten the F2 screws. To have access to F2 screws, remember you need to remove this protection, or this one depends on the one you're going to want to tighten. I have a video about that. Check it right here. And you have two screws, F1 and F2. You just need to grab your screwdrivers and screw it to where it needs to be screwed. Okay, next question. I bought a DJI FPV and crashed it. Could I still use the goggles and control on a different brand drone? So this guy has crashed his FPV drone phone is asking if the goggles and controller are still usable. The answer is, if it happens to you, you're only going to be able to use the goggles. Your remote controller becomes useless, except if you plan to buy another DJI FPV quad. This remote controller can only be synced to a DJI FPV quad. Okay, so this question, I think it sounds like what we said before. DJI FPV controller from Liftoff. I bought the DJI FPV controller V2 for my drone and wanted to get some practice in using the controller on Liftoff first. The problem I've run into is that it recognizes the controller but not the inputs. Now, I've seen that to get it to work, I need to connect DJI FPV drone first or register it. The problem is I don't have that drone, just the goggles. So let me rephrase that. This person we're talking about purchased only the remote controller without the quad and the goggles, and this guy wanted to start like practicing on Liftoff. The problem is this remote controller needs to be synced to a quad and goggles to be recognized on Liftoff. So this guy didn't purchase the quad and the goggles. The only solution is connect to someone who already has the quad and the goggles and sync it with his gear and give him a few bucks. So last question, someone broke his sticks. Okay, so this person is saying that the stick got broken and like the down part of the stick is still in there. So the question is, how do we remove it? What should I do? The throttle stick broke mid-flight when I went for an aggressive climb, and now the thread is stuck inside. We have several opinions about it. The first one, as a metal worker, best advice I can give is do not try to super glue or hot glue it out. The glue will go down to the thread and you will never get it out. Try to find the smallest drill bit you can find and drill very carefully in the center. I recommend to make a little dent in the middle so your drill has something to bite to of the stick, so there's still a little bit of material left on the outside. After that, you could try to either break the cylinder that is now still in the thread and fish out the pieces, or maybe insert something into the hole that is able to grip and twist it out. Okay, so the metal worker says drill it out if you're able to. Some other people say second opinion. Someone says send it back to DJI and ask for a new one. And we are going to stop there. Hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.